Judge Alexander Thorne leaned back on his bench and chuckled at the woman before him, not knowing he was laughing at the single most powerful legal mind in the country. The ceiling fans in the Clayton County Courthouse spun with a lazy, ineffective whir, doing little to cut through the southern heat that seeped through the old brick walls. The air smelled of desperation, cheap pine cleaner, and lost causes. In the back row of the public gallery, Dr. Evelyn Reed sat perfectly still. At 64, her posture was erect, her hands resting calmly in her lap. Today, the esteemed Associate Justice of the Supreme Court was not draped in her ceremonial robe. She wore a simple, faded denim jacket, comfortable walking shoes, and a plain t-shirt. She looked like countless other grandmothers waiting for a bus, but her eyes, sharp and assessing, missed nothing. She watched the board clerk snapping her gum as she called the docket. She noted the indifferent bailiff, a man named Roy, scrolling through his phone, and she studied the man presiding over it all, Judge Alexander Alec Thorne. He was a man in his late 50s with a perpetually sun-reddened neck and a manner that suggested the courtroom was his personal stage. The gavel was his prop, and the citizens before him were his unwilling audience. Evelyn had heard the stories for years. Her own cousin Marcus had written to her after his son received a 6-month sentence for a misdemeanor that typically carried a fine. The judge didn't even let his lawyer finish, the letter read. He took one look at him and saw a problem to be locked away. That letter had been the final straw. So Dr. Evelyn Reed had taken a quiet leave. She told her clerks she was visiting family. She did not tell them she was walking into the belly of a broken system to perform a diagnosis. Next case, Thorne barked without looking up from a file. A young man shuffled forward, charged with an expired vehicle registration. He tried to explain his financial hardship. Thorne cut him off. "Ignorance isn't a defense, son. That'll be $400 or 10 days in county." Next, the young man's shoulders slumped. A cold, familiar fire ignited in Evelyn's chest, the same fire that had fueled her climb from a scholarship student to the highest court in the land. Her case was called a minor property line dispute regarding a vacant lot she owned through a trust. The paperwork was intentionally sparse, the matter trivial. She had crafted it to be the kind of nuisance case Thorne despised. She walked slowly to the defendant's table, the picture of an unassuming, older woman. "State your name for the record," Thorne muttered, finally glancing up. His eyes swept over her denim jacket with undisguised disdain. "Evelyn Reed," she said, her voice calm and clear, a voice accustomed to being heard in the most hallowed halls. Thorne let out a short, derisive snort. "Ms. Reed, this is a court of law. We have certain standards of decorum. Did you get lost on the way to the grocery store?" A few sycophantic lawyers in the front row chuckled on cue. Roy the bailiff smirked. "My apologies, Your Honor," Evelyn replied evenly. "My travel arrangements were complicated. I believed punctuality was more important than presentation." "Complicated," Thorne echoed, mocking her diction. "You mean the city bus was late? Let's move this along. You've ignored 3 city notices about an encroaching fence. Guilty as charged, a $500 fine." "I never received formal notice at my legal residence, Your Honor," Evelyn stated. "Due process requires service to the owner's primary dwelling, not just the property in question." SFX, a subtle, tense musical cue. Thorne paused, blinked. The technical correction from a woman in a denim jacket seemed to short-circuit his arrogance for a second. Then his face flushed a deeper red. "Don't you dare lecture me on procedure in my own courtroom," he sneered, leaning forward. "I am the procedure here. The fine stands. Pay it or appeal it. I don't care." "With respect," Evelyn said, her tone dropping, becoming steely. "Imposing a punitive fine without an evidentiary hearing on a civil matter violates fundamental principles of fairness. It's a denial of basic rights." The few remaining chuckles in the room died instantly. The lawyers turned in their seats, their expressions shifting from amusement to confusion. That was not the language of a confused senior citizen. Thorne stared, then he did the unthinkable. He laughed. It was a loud, grating, humorless laugh. "Rights," he boomed. "You're talking to me about rights. Lady, in this room your only right is to do what I say. Bailiff, if she says another word you have my permission to hold her in contempt. A weekend in a cell might adjust her attitude." Roy stepped forward, a meaty hand reaching for Evelyn's arm. She pulled her arm back before he could make contact. "Do not touch me," she said, and her voice carried a quiet authority that made Roy hesitate. She turned her gaze back to Thorne. "You are making a catastrophic error in judgment today, Alexander." She had dropped the "Your Honor." The insult was deliberate, absolute. Thorne shot to his feet, his chair screeching walking backward. That's it, 30 days for contempt. Get her out of my sight. Roy finally grabbed her arm, this time with force, and began to pull her toward the side door. Evelyn did not resist. She allowed herself to be escorted from the courtroom. She allowed the heavy metal door of the holding cell to clang shut behind her. She sat on the cold bench, back straight, amidst the smell of mildew and despair. A younger woman in the cell looked at her with pity. You mouthed off to Thorn, huh? Everyone knows you don't do that. It appears I did, Evelyn said calmly. Why, for a stupid fence? Not for the fence, Evelyn replied, her eyes like flint. For the principal, and principals have a longer memory than tyrants. Upstairs, Judge Thorn was in his chambers, regaling a local councilman with the story. You should have seen her, quoting the law at me like she's some jailhouse lawyer, gave her 30 days to cool off. He took a bite of a sandwich, smug. The intercom on his desk buzzed. It was the clerk, her voice tight with panic. Judge, there's a call for you on line 1. It's the state attorney general's office. Thorn frowned, swallowing. Tell them I'm in session. Sir, they're asking about a detainee. A Dr. Evelyn Reed. A sliver of ice traced Thorn's spine. Reed, what about her? The clerk's voice dropped to a terrified whisper. The AG's aide, he didn't call her Ms. Reed, Judge. He called her Justice Reed. The sandwich turned to ash in Thorn's mouth. Justice. He fumbled for his keyboard, fingers trembling as he typed the name. The search results loaded. The first image was an official portrait, a formidable, wise-eyed woman in black judicial robes standing beside former presidents. The face, though older and without the finery, was unmistakable. It was the woman from his courtroom, Justice Evelyn Reed, a legal scholar famous for her relentless pursuit of judicial ethics reform. The blood drained from Thorn's face. Oh my God, he breathed. To the councilman, he rasped, get out. 5 minutes later, a pale and sweating Roy unlocked the cell door. Ma'am, Dr. Reed, the judge would like to see you in his chambers. Evelyn stood slowly, smoothing her jacket. She followed Roy through the buzzing courthouse. The energy had changed. Whispers trailed in her wake. Thorn was standing behind his desk, having futilely tried to straighten his tie. A glass of water sat untouched, his handprints visible on the glass from his clammy grip. Justice Reed, he began, forcing a shattered smile. A profound misunderstanding, a terrible breach of protocol. If I had any idea, if you had known who I was, Evelyn finished for him, her voice cool, you would have followed the law. Is that your argument, that you only respect the law when it's worn by someone important? It's not that simple. This court, the volume, the stress. Do not insult me by explaining stress, Evelyn cut him off. I have presided over cases that determine the fate of nations. The stress of power is no excuse for its abuse. She stepped closer. I am here because of Marcus Johnson and Jamal and 100 other names you never bothered to learn before you made them statistics. The name Johnson hit Thorn like a physical blow. He remembered the case, a kid with a record, an easy target. He'd thrown the book to send a message. He was your. It does not matter who he was to me, Evelyn stated, her voice quivering with controlled fury. It only mattered who he was to you, another black face to be processed and punished. You did not see a citizen, you saw a caricature. She reached into her jacket pocket. Thorn flinched. She pulled out a small, high-quality digital recorder, its red light glowing. I have a complete audio record of today's proceedings. Your mockery, your denial of due process, your threat of incarceration for a civil matter, all of it. Thorn stammered, the walls closing in. This is a two-party state. An exception exists for conversations with public officials in the conduct of their public duties, Evelyn said calmly. But you're right, its primary value may not be in a courtroom. Imagine it playing on the evening news or before the State Judicial Conduct Board. Thorn collapsed into his chair, the fight leaving him. What do you want? He whispered. I want you to resign today, and I want you to testify before a special investigator about the kickback scheme with the private probation company and the sentencing quotas you used to justify funding for your pet projects. His head snapped up. How could you possibly know about that? Evelyn allowed herself a thin, cold smile. Did you think I came here on a whim? Your corruption has a paper trail, Alexander. My investigators have been following it for months. As if on cue, there was a firm knock on the chamber door. It opened without waiting for an answer. 2 state investigators in suits stood there, accompanied by a uniformed officer from the state patrol. Judge Alexander Thorn, the lead investigator said. We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of bribery, conspiracy, and deprivation of rights under color of law. You need to come with us. Thorn looked from the investigators to Evelyn, his eyes pleading for a mercy he had never shown. Evelyn met his gaze without a flicker of emotion. It's time to go, Judge. The perp walk through the courthouse lobby was a spectacle tale of poetic justice. Thorne, in handcuffs, head bowed, was led past the very people he had tyrannized. Evelyn walked a few steps behind, a silent, powerful witness. In the center of the rotunda, she stopped and addressed the stunned crowd. "My name is Justice Evelyn Reed," she announced, her voice resonating in the sudden silence. "For years, this man has treated this courthouse as his personal fiefdom. That ends today. An audit of every case he has touched in the past 5 years will begin immediately. If you have been wronged here, you will have a chance to be heard." The aftermath was a tidal wave. Thorne's arrest unraveled a network that included a corrupt county commissioner and the head of the probation company. But Evelyn was not finished. Using her influence, she pushed for the creation of a community restitution fund financed by the seized assets of the conspirators. The vacant lot at the center of her pretend case became the site of a new community legal aid center, named not for her, but for the principles she fought for. 1 year later, Evelyn returned to Clayton County to dedicate the center. Her cousin Marcus and his son Jamal stood beside her. Jamal, his record expunged, was now applying to college. "You didn't just help us, Auntie," he said. "You changed everything." "No," Evelyn corrected softly, looking at the crowd of hopeful faces. "I just removed a roadblock. The community changed itself." As her car pulled away, she saw the new young judge presiding over traffic court, treating each person with weary patience. She nodded to herself. The lesson had been learned. True authority isn't about the fear you command, it's about the fairness you protect. If you believe in accountability and second chances, show your support. Like this video and subscribe to Unbound Stories SR for more powerful narratives about justice and truth. What would you have done if you were in that courtroom? Let me know in the comments.